They told me I had 6 months to live. So I gave my son everything, $900,000, my entire life savings. He cried in my arms and promised to save his business and his family. Then I followed him one night, watched him unlock a house I'd never seen, kiss a woman who wasn't his wife. My cancer money bought their love nest. Please subscribe and like my 10 p.m. stories, one story every night. It truly helps these tales touch more hearts. Share where you're listening from in the comments. Seeing our growing family from around the world always brings me joy. Now, let the story unfold. Daniel was always my golden boy. That's what mothers say, isn't it? But with him, it felt true. 42 years old, married to sweet Elena for 15 years, father to my 2 grandchildren, Mia, 12, and Josh, 9, he ran a consulting firm downtown, something with technology that I never fully understood but always pretended to when he explained it over Sunday dinners. Those dinners were my anchor. Every week, without fail, his family would crowd into my small kitchen. Elena would bring wine, the kids would argue over who got to sit next to Grandma, Daniel would kiss my cheek and say, "How's my best girl?" I'd lived alone since my husband, Michael, died 8 years ago. Heart attack. Quick and cruel, the way death sometimes is when it wants to be efficient. The life insurance had been modest, but combined with our savings, I had enough. Enough to be comfortable, enough to help my son if he ever needed it. The cough started in March, dry and persistent, like someone had left sandpaper in my throat. I ignored it for weeks. Old age comes with aches, I told myself. But when I started tasting copper, when I couldn't walk to the mailbox without stopping to catch my breath, I finally went to Dr. Morrison. The X-ray showed shadows that shouldn't exist. The biopsy confirmed what the shadows meant. Stage 3 lung cancer. Aggressive. Inoperable due to its location near major blood vessels. 6 to 12 months, maybe 18 with treatment. I didn't cry in the office. I saved that for my car, hands gripping the steering wheel in the parking garage, the fluorescent lights buzzing above me like dying insects. I'd never smoked a day in my life, neither had Michael. But my father had 2 packs a day for 40 years, filling our childhood home with smoke that clung to the curtains, our clothes, and our lungs. Second-hand death. That's what this was. I didn't tell Daniel immediately. I wanted one more Sunday dinner where I was just mom, just grandma, not the dying woman who'd become everyone's project. But the following week, when he called Tuesday evening, unusual for him, I heard something in his voice that made my diagnosis feel suddenly less important. "Mom," he said, and the word came out cracked. "I need to talk to you about something. Can I come by?" He arrived 20 minutes later. No Elena, no kids, just Daniel, my son, looking 10 years older than he did 4 days ago. Daniel sat at my kitchen table, the same table where he'd done homework as a child, where I'd taught him to play chess, and where he told me he was going to marry Elena. He didn't meet my eyes. His fingers drummed against the wood. Tap, 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 a nervous habit he'd had since childhood. "The business is failing," he said finally. The words came out flat, rehearsed. "We lost our 2 biggest clients last quarter, corporate restructuring, nothing we could control. But without them, we can't cover payroll, can't cover rent, can't cover anything." I poured him tea. He didn't drink. "How bad is it?" "I'm 3 months behind on the office lease. I've maxed out 2 credit cards trying to keep employees paid. Elena doesn't know how bad it is. I didn't want to worry her. She's been dealing with her mother's dementia and—" He finally looked up. His eyes were red-rimmed. "Mom, if I can't turn this around in the next 60 days, I lose everything. The business, our reputation, maybe even the house if I can't—" He stopped, covered his face with his hands. This was my son, my only child, the boy I'd rocked through nightmares, walked to his first day of school, and helped pack for college. The man who'd given me grandchildren, who called me every Sunday, even when he couldn't visit, who'd held my hand at Michael's funeral and promised me I'd never be alone. "How much do you need?" I asked. "Mom, no, I didn't come here to—" "How much, Daniel?" He swallowed. "To clear the debts, cover 6 months of operating costs, and have enough for a marketing push to bring in new clients? 900,000, maybe a bit less. But Mom, that's impossible, I know that. I just needed to tell someone how scared I am." $900,000. It was almost exactly what I had. Michael's life insurance, our savings, and the money from selling the beach house after he died. My entire safety net is liquidated and sitting in a retirement account, earning modest interest. My cancer fund, though I hadn't told Daniel that yet. I looked at my son, really looked at him, at the gray threading through his hair, the worry lines etched around his eyes, the trembling in his hands as he lifted the teacup he'd claimed he didn't want. "I have it," I said quietly. His head snapped up. "What?" "I have the money. I can give it to you." "Mom, no, I wasn't asking for—" "I know you weren't, but I'm offering." I reached across the table and took his shaking hand. "You're my son. You built that business from nothing. You employ 12 people, 12 families depending on you. I'm not going to watch it collapse if I can prevent it." He cried, 42 years old, and my son collapsed into tears the way he had as a little boy when his first dog died. I held him, stroked his hair, and told him it would be okay. We agreed he'd pay me back once the business stabilized. Market rate interest, he insisted. I didn't care about interest, but I let him believe in the formality of it. It made him feel less like he was taking and more like he was borrowing. I didn't tell him about the cancer. The moment felt too fragile, and besides, I'd decided something sitting there with his tears soaking into my shoulder. If these were my final months, I wanted them spent helping my son build his future, not having him hover over my deathbed. There'd be time for my news later, after his crisis passed. We met with my financial advisor, Richard, the following week. Daniel brought a detailed business plan, spreadsheets, and projections. He was prepared to justify every dollar. Richard looked it over, asked sharp questions, and seemed impressed despite himself. "The fundamentals are solid," Richard told me privately, while Daniel waited in the lobby. "If he can execute this turnaround plan, he'll recover. But Zara, this is your entire liquid net worth. If something happens, if you have an emergency—" "I trust my son," I said simply. The paperwork took 2 weeks, liquidating retirement accounts, paying early withdrawal penalties, transferring funds. Each signature felt both terrifying and righteous. This was what money was for, wasn't it? Not to die with, but to use for the people you loved. The day the transfer was completed, Daniel took me to lunch, an expensive place downtown I'd never been to. He ordered champagne. "To the best mother in the world," he toasted, his eyes shining. We clinked glasses. The champagne tasted like hope. That night, I started chemotherapy. I'd scheduled the first session deliberately, after the money was safely in Daniel's accounts, after he didn't need to worry about me, after I could suffer through this alone without becoming his burden. The oncologist wanted to start treatment weeks earlier, but I'd delayed. Some sacrifices, I'd learned, require precise timing. The first session left me hollowed out, nauseated, and so weak I couldn't stand without holding furniture. But when Daniel called that evening, excited about signing a new client, I lied through my teeth about feeling fine, about having a little stomach bug, nothing serious. 3 weeks passed, then 4. The chemotherapy ravaged me in ways I hadn't anticipated. I lost 15 pounds. My hair started falling out in the shower, not in dramatic clumps like in movies, but gradually, treacherously, until I looked like a dandelion gone to seed. I bought a wig. Expensive and uncomfortable, but it looked real enough in dim lighting. Sunday dinners continued, but now I set alarms to remind me to take anti-nausea medication 2 hours before they arrived. I learned to cook sitting down, to hide my exhaustion behind elaborate table settings that made it look like I'd been fussing all day. Elena commented once that I'd lost weight. Finally doing something about this, I'd laughed, patting my stomach, trying that intermittent fasting everyone talks about. She'd accepted it. Why wouldn't she? People don't look for cancer in someone who's smiling, who is serving pot roast, and who's asking about soccer practice and school projects. But then Daniel missed a Sunday, called an hour before they were supposed to arrive, apologetic, rushed. "Mom, I'm so sorry. Emergency with a client. Have to fly to Boston tonight. Meeting first thing tomorrow. Range check?" "Of course, sweetheart. Business comes first." The following Sunday, Elena called. "Zara, I'm so sorry. Daniel's still in Boston. The project's more complicated than expected. And Josh has a terrible cold. I don't want to give it to you. Next week, for sure?" "Absolutely. Give Josh my love." But next week, Daniel had another trip. Chicago this time, then Philadelphia, then back to Boston for follow-up meetings. 6 weeks without a Sunday dinner. I told myself it was good news. The business was booming, my money had worked, and my sacrifice had meaning. But something felt wrong, like a note played slightly off-key in a familiar song. You couldn't identify what was wrong, but you knew something was. I called him on a Wednesday evening. He answered on the 4th ring, slightly breathless. "Mom, hey, sorry, I'm just—" Background noise. Music? Laughter? "Wrapping something up. Can I call you back?" "Of course, I just wanted to hear your voice." "You're the best. Love you. I'll call tomorrow." He didn't call tomorrow, or the day after. I started going to chemotherapy on Thursdays. The treatments left me destroyed for 48 hours. Friday and Saturday lost to nausea and bone-deep fatigue. By Sunday, I could function, could pretend to be alive instead of dying by inches. The oncologist said the tumors were shrinking, slowly but shrinking. "You're responding well," Dr. Morrison told me. "We might buy you more time than we initially thought." More time, as if time was something you could purchase, could hold in your hands like loose change. I was buying it with poison pumped into my veins and $900,000 handed to a son who'd stopped calling. I told myself I was being paranoid. Chemotherapy brain, they called it, the fog that settled over your thoughts, making you suspicious and irrational. Daniel was busy. He was saving his business, securing his family's future. This was what I'd given him the money for. But mothers have instincts, and mine were screaming. It was Elena who finally cracked the facade. She appeared at my door on a Tuesday afternoon, unannounced, her eyes swollen from crying. "Can I come in?" she whispered. I made tea. Waited. "He's different, Daniel. I don't know, distant. He's home maybe 3 nights a week now, always traveling, always with clients, always too busy to talk. And when he is home, he's on his phone constantly, texting, smiling at things I'm not part of. Last week, I asked to see his calendar to plan a family vacation, and he—" She stopped and bit her lip. "He told me I was being controlling. We've been married 15 years, Zara. He's never called me controlling." My hands were steady holding the teacup. My voice was calm when I spoke, but inside something was crumbling. "Do you think he's having an affair?" She flinched at the word, as if saying it out loud made it more real. "I don't know. Maybe. He swears he's not, says I'm paranoid, that the stress of the business turnaround is making me imagine things. But, Zara, he forgot Josh's birthday last month. Forgot it completely. Didn't remember until Josh asked him why Daddy hadn't called. What man forgets his own son's birthday? A man who's thinking about someone else, I thought, but didn't say. We talked for 2 hours. By the end, Elena was calmer, but no less worried. I promised to talk to Daniel to find out what was happening. She left looking fragile, like she might shatter if the wind blew too hard. I sat in my empty house, the wig itching my scalp, my body aching from yesterday's treatment, and felt the first cold finger of real fear trace down my spine. $900,000. Where exactly had it gone? I'd been naive, willfully, stupidly naive. I'd given my son nearly $1 million and hadn't asked for updates, reports, or anything beyond his word that things were improving. I'd trusted him so completely that I hadn't thought to verify. But trust, I was learning, is a luxury dying people can't afford. Richard, my financial advisor, was reluctant at first. "Zara, if you're concerned about the loan terms, we can revise." "I want to see where the money went," I interrupted. "Daniel's my son, and I love him, but this is my entire life savings. I need to know it's being used the way he promised." Richard's expression shifted. Something like pity crossed his face. "You didn't require reporting terms?" "Should I have?" He sighed, pulled up his computer. The money was transferred to Daniel's business account on March 15th. After that, I don't have visibility unless you're on the account. But, he typed and clicked, his face growing increasingly tense. "Zara, did Daniel tell you he closed the business?" The floor tilted. What? The LLC was dissolved on April 2nd, 18 days after he received your money. It's public record. I'm looking at it right now. Dissolved. The word felt obscene. "That's impossible. He's been traveling for work. He told Elena he's meeting with clients. He said..." Whatever he said, the business legally doesn't exist anymore. Richard turned the monitor toward me. Official state documents, stamped and dated. Effective dissolution, April 2nd, 2025. I couldn't breathe. The chemotherapy nausea was nothing compared to this gutting sensation, like someone had reached inside me and removed something essential. "Where did the money go?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Richard's fingers flew across the keyboard. "I can't access his personal accounts, but the business account shows..." Jesus. "Zara, I'm sorry. There was one large transfer out on March 28th, $750,000, to..." He leaned closer to the screen, frowning. "To a real estate title company, Berkshire Residential Holdings. $750,000 for real estate. Can you find out what property?" "I can try. Give me a few minutes." Those minutes felt like hours. I sat frozen in the chair, my hands folded in my lap, while Richard made calls, typed, searched databases. The wig was suffocating. I wanted to rip it off, wanted to scream, wanted to wake up and discover this was a nightmare manufactured by chemotherapy drugs. "Found it," Richard said finally. His voice was gentle, the way you'd speak to someone you're about to destroy. 4-bedroom house in Riverside Estates, purchased March 28th, cash sale, deed registered to... She paused, looked at me. "Zara, the deed isn't in Daniel's name." "Whose name is it in?" "Someone named Cassandra Reeves. Mean anything to you?" It didn't. Not yet. But soon that name would mean everything. I hired a private investigator. Not dramatically, not with any sense of noir mystery. I just Googled "private investigator Boston" and picked the one with decent reviews and a kind-sounding voice on the phone. Her name was Patricia Mills. She didn't ask many questions, which I appreciated. "Find out everything you can about Cassandra Reeves and about my son's relationship with her." "How far back should I look?" "However far the truth goes." Patricia called me 3 days later. "Mrs. Hartley, can we meet in person? There are some things you should see." We met at a coffee shop near the hospital where I received treatment. I'd had a session that morning and felt like death warmed over. But I wore the wig, put on lipstick, and walked in like a woman who wasn't dying. Patricia didn't waste time with prelatures. She slid a folder across the table. Cassandra Reeves, 29 years old, works as a marketing coordinator at Brennan and Associates, the firm Daniel's business used for consulting before it dissolved. They met approximately 18 months ago at a conference in Miami. 18 months, while I was still healthy, while Michael's memory was still fresh, while Sunday dinners were sacred. Patricia opened the folder. Photographs spilled out. Daniel and a young woman, blonde, beautiful, laughing at a restaurant, holding hands walking through a park, kissing in a parking garage, his hand tangled in her hair. The most recent photo showed them at the house my money bought. She was holding paint swatches up to the wall, and he was looking at her the way he used to look at Elena 20 years ago. The house purchase closed March 28th, deed in Cassandra's name only. Your son has been seen there regularly, neighbors report. He arrives most evenings around 7 and leaves about midnight, sometimes stays overnight. Cassandra quit her job at Brennan and Associates on April 15th. She hasn't worked since. And his business? My voice sounded distant, like it belonged to someone else. Dissolved April 2nd, as you discovered. He kept 2 employees on personal consulting contracts for about 3 weeks, likely to maintain the appearance of ongoing work, paid them with your money, then let them go. The remaining funds? Patricia hesitated. Mrs. Hartley, I tracked credit card statements through public records and vendor receipts. Your money has been funding their life together. Furniture for the house, a new car in her name, a Mercedes, $68,000, jewelry, trips to Napa Valley and to Puerto Rico. In 3 months, your son has spent your $900,000 building a completely separate existence with this woman. The coffee in front of me had gone cold. I stared at the photographs, at my son's face, radiant with happiness, with a woman younger than his daughter. "Does his wife know?" I asked. "I don't believe so. He's maintained the travel story. I pulled his actual whereabouts for the past 6 weeks. Every business trip was actually time spent at the Riverside house with Ms. Reeves." I gathered the photographs with shaking hands. "Thank you, Patricia. Send me your final invoice." "Mrs. Hartley, I'm sorry, truly." Everyone was always sorry, but sorry didn't rebuild what had been destroyed. Sorry didn't give me back my money, my health, or my faith in the person I'd raised. I drove to the Riverside house that evening, parked across the street where I could see but not be seen. It was beautiful, craftsman-style, wraparound porch, the kind of house I dreamed of owning when Daniel was young but could never afford. Warm light glowed through the windows. Through the front bay window I could see them, Daniel and Cassandra, cooking together in the kitchen, laughing, dancing, actually dancing as if life was a romantic comedy and not a tragedy they'd built on someone else's bones. I sat in my car until midnight, watching my son live a life purchased with my death. I planned it carefully, waited until Elena called again, desperate and crying, asking if I'd learned anything. Told her to meet me for lunch the next day and to bring the children. Then I called Daniel. "Mom, God, I'm sorry I haven't called. Things have been absolutely insane, but the business is really turning around. I think we're going to make it." "I'm glad to hear that," I said calmly. "I'd love to see the progress. Can you come by Sunday? Bring the quarterly reports, maybe. I'd like to understand how my investment is performing." A pause, subtle but there. "Of course, yeah. I'll have to pull some documents together, but absolutely. This Sunday work?" "This Sunday is perfect." I didn't sleep Saturday night. Chemotherapy exhaustion warred with adrenaline. I kept seeing Cassandra's face in those photographs, young, pretty, uncomplicated, everything I wasn't anymore, everything Elena, with her worry lines and stretch marks and 15 years of marriage, wasn't. Sunday morning I set the table for 2, made coffee, laid out the folder Patricia had given me, photographs face down like cards I'd reveal one at a time. Daniel arrived at 10, alone. Elena had to take Josh to urgent care, possible ear infection, and Mia had a sleepover. But hey, gives us time to talk business, right? He looked good, rested, happy, like a man whose life was working out exactly as planned. "Sit down, Daniel." Something in my voice made him pause, but he sat, accepted the coffee I poured, and started pulling papers from his briefcase. "So I've got the Q2 projections here, and if you look at the revenue model—" Interrupted. "When did you close the business?" His hands stilled. "What? The business, your consulting firm. When did you dissolve it?" The color drained from his face. "Mom, I don't—" 18 days after I gave you $900,000 to save it. So let me ask again, when were you planning to tell me you'd closed the business?" He opened his mouth, closed it, tried again. "It's not what you think." "Then explain it to me." "The business model wasn't sustainable. I realized that after we got the money. The clients we lost weren't coming back, and trying to rebuild from that foundation would have just been throwing good money after bad. So I made a strategic decision to pivot, start fresh, and I needed some time to buy a house for your mistress." The word hung between us like smoke. Daniel's face went from pale to gray. I turned over the photographs, one by one. Each image is a small detonation. Him holding her hand, kissing her, standing in front of the house built with money meant to save his family. "Mom," his voice cracked, "please let me explain." "Explain what? That you took money meant to save your business and spent it on a 29-year-old girl? That you've been lying to your wife for 18 months? That you've been lying to me for 3 months about where my life savings went?" My voice was rising and I couldn't stop it. "I'm dying, Daniel. Lung cancer, stage 3. I gave you that money knowing I'd need it for medical bills, for care, for having something to leave my grandchildren. I gave it to you anyway because you're my son, and I trusted you." He was crying now. "You're— what? Mom, why didn't you tell me?" "Because you came to me desperate, because I thought saving your business and saving your family's future mattered more than my diagnosis. Because I'm your mother, and that's what mothers do. We sacrifice for our children even when it costs us everything." I was standing now, gripping the table edge to stay upright. "I've been going through chemotherapy alone, while you've been playing house with a woman half your age. Every Sunday you canceled, every call you didn't return, I was losing my hair and vomiting and wondering if I'd see another Christmas, and you were shopping for paint swatches." "I'm sorry," he was sobbing. "God, Mom, I'm so sorry. I never meant for any of this to happen. I met Cassie and something just clicked. Alina and I have been dead for years, just coasting, pretending for the kids, and Cassie made me feel alive again, young. And the business really was failing, but you're right, I should have been honest. I should have told you I was using the money differently. I panicked. I didn't know how to tell you I was leaving Elena." "So you let me believe a lie while you spent my money building your affair into a relationship." I sat down, suddenly too exhausted to stand. "Does Elena know?" He shook his head. "Do the children know?" Another shake. "When were you planning to tell them? After I'm dead? After I can't see their faces when they realize their father chose a young mistress over their mother, over their grandmother's life?" Daniel reached for my hand. I pulled away. "What do you want me to do?" he whispered. "I'll do anything. I'll pay you back. I'll figure it out. I'll sell the house. The house is in her name. You can't sell it. Then I'll ask her to—" "Ask her? Ask her?" I laughed, and it sounded like breaking glass. Daniel, you don't understand what you've done. This isn't about the money. This is about who you've become. You looked at your mother dying of cancer and decided your happiness with a girl young enough to be your daughter mattered more. You looked at your wife, the woman who's given you 15 years and 2 children, and who's been taking care of her mother with dementia, and decided she was disposable. You looked at Mia and Josh and decided they'd adjust. Kids are resilient, he said weakly. Kids are traumatized. I slammed my hand on the table. The coffee cups rattled. Do you know what it does to a child to watch their father abandon their mother? To see their family torn apart because daddy wanted to feel young again? I raised you better than this. Your father raised you better than this. At Michael's name, Daniel flinched. Dad would understand. He'd want me to be happy. Your father would be ashamed. The words came out cold and final. Michael worked himself to exhaustion to provide for us. He never complained, never strayed, and never once made me feel like I wasn't enough. And you've dishonored his memory by pissing away his life insurance money on a midlife crisis. Daniel stood abruptly. I didn't come here to be attacked. No, you came here to feed me more lies, to show me fake reports and pretend the business is thriving. Did you even prepare any documents, or were you planning to improvise? His silence was answer enough. Get out, I said quietly. Mom, get out of my house, and don't come back until you've told Elena the truth. All of it. The affair, the money, everything. She deserves that much. If I tell her, she'll divorce me, take the kids. I'll lose everything. You already lost everything. I met his eyes. You just don't know it yet. He grabbed his briefcase, movements jerky and panicked. At the door, he turned back. I do love you, Mom. I know you don't believe that right now, but I do. Love is a verb, Daniel. It's what you do, not what you say. And what you did was unforgivable. The door closed. I sat in the sudden silence, my body shaking so violently I thought I might come apart. The confrontation had taken everything I had. I made it to the bathroom just before I vomited. Whether from chemo or emotional devastation, I couldn't tell. Later, lying on the bathroom floor because I couldn't stand, I called Patricia. I need you to send everything to Elena Hartley, I said. Every photograph, every document, every receipt. She needs to know what her husband has been doing. Are you sure? That's going to destroy their marriage. Their marriage is already destroyed. She just doesn't know it yet. And she deserves the truth before she wastes another day on a man who doesn't deserve her. Patricia agreed, said she'd compile a complete dossier and deliver it to Elena by courier the next morning. I hung up and closed my eyes, wondered if this was what justice felt like, or if it was just revenge dressed in righteousness, decided I didn't care about the distinction anymore. Elena called me Tuesday morning at 6 a.m. I was awake, chemotherapy insomnia kept me up most nights now, but I wasn't prepared for the sound of her voice, destroyed, guttural, the sound of a woman whose world had ended. Did you know? She asked. Did you know when I came to you crying? When I asked if you thought he was having an affair? No, I suspected, but I didn't know, not then. But you know now. You sent me this folder full of... She couldn't finish, just sobbed into the phone. I'm sorry, Elena. You needed to see the truth. The truth? The truth is that I've wasted 15 years on a man who was fucking a child while his mother was dying of cancer. She was screaming now. Did you know about the cancer? He said you told him Sunday, said you ambushed him with it Sunday. I have stage 3 lung cancer. I've been in treatment for 3 months, alone. Oh God, Zara, I'm so sorry. I should have noticed. I should have seen you weren't well. But I was so consumed with Daniel's distance and my mother and the kids and... She broke off. He spent your cancer money on her, on that girl. What kind of monster does that? A selfish one, I said quietly. We talked for 2 hours. She'd confronted Daniel the night before after reading through Patricia's dossier. He'd admitted everything, claimed it was love, that he couldn't help it, that Cassandra made him feel things Elena never had, said terrible things, that their marriage had been dead for years, that he'd only stayed for the kids, and that Elena had let herself go and stopped trying. I gained 20 pounds after Josh, Elena whispered. 20 pounds, and apparently that was enough reason to throw away our family. He filed for divorce that afternoon. She asked for full custody, the house, child support, and alimony. Daniel, backed into a corner with no money left to fight, agreed to everything. He had no choice. The house, the car, the furniture, it was all in Cassandra's name. He'd left himself nothing. The children learned their father was leaving 3 days later. Mia, 12 years old and suddenly ancient, called me crying. "Why doesn't Daddy love us anymore, Grandma?" "I does love you," I lied, because some lies are merciful. Sometimes adults make mistakes, but this isn't about you or Josh. You're perfect, sweetheart. This is Daddy's failing, not yours. But she knew. Children always know when they're being abandoned. Josh, only 9, stopped talking. Elena said he sat in his room for hours staring at the wall, not crying, not reacting, just gone. Disappeared into himself the way children do when reality becomes unbearable. Daniel moved into the Riverside house with Cassandra full-time. His coworkers, his friends, his family, everyone learned the truth within days. Small-town gossip moves fast. He was finished professionally. No one wanted to work with the man who'd stolen his dying mother's money to fund his affair. He called me once, 2 weeks after our confrontation. "Mom, please, everyone's turning on me. I've got clients canceling contracts, and friends won't return my calls. Elena's poisoning the kids against me. Cassie's parents won't speak to her anymore. This is destroying both of us." "Good," I said, and hung up. My oncologist called me in for an emergency appointment in late June. Dr. Morrison's face told me everything before she spoke. "The cancer's spreading," she said gently, "into the lymph nodes. We can continue treatment, but Zara, at this point we're buying weeks, maybe a couple of months. The tumors are aggressive, and your body is so weakened from the current regimen that—" "Stop treatment," I interrupted. "Zara!" "No, stop it. I'm done." I was surprisingly calm. I'm not spending my final weeks vomiting and exhausted so I can die in October instead of September. I want quality over quantity now. She argued, of course, talked about new protocols, clinical trials, and hope. But hope was for people who had something to hope for. My son had stolen my future and built someone else's paradise with it. My body was eating itself from the inside out. My grandchildren were traumatized. What exactly was I fighting for? I stopped chemotherapy that day. The relief was immediate and profound. Within a week, the nausea faded, my appetite returned, the crushing fatigue lifted slightly. I was still dying, no question about that, but at least now I could die on my terms. Elena brought the kids to visit once a week. Mia was trying to be brave, asking careful questions about heaven and whether Grandma Michael would be there to meet me. Josh still barely spoke, but he'd curl up against me on the couch while we watched movies, and sometimes I'd feel him trembling. "He's in therapy," Elena told me quietly while the kids were in the other room. "They both are. The therapist says Josh is traumatized by the double abandonment, his father leaving and his grandmother dying simultaneously. He feels like everyone he loves leaves him." "I'm not leaving by choice," I said, throat tight. "I know, but he's 9. He just knows people disappear." Daniel wasn't allowed at these visits. That was Elena's rule, and I supported it. The children needed stability, and he represented chaos. I'd heard through Elena that he and Cassandra were struggling. Turns out relationships built on affair energy and stolen money don't thrive when reality intrudes. Cassandra had expected excitement and romance, not a pariah boyfriend with no income and traumatized children who hated her. They were fighting constantly, Elena reported with grim satisfaction. Cassandra wanted him to get a job, any job. Daniel felt the world was treating him unfairly. She thought he should grovel to his family. He thought they should accept his happiness. Neither was willing to compromise. They deserve each other, Elena said, and I hope they're miserable. I understood the sentiment, but mostly I just felt tired. Tired of anger, tired of betrayal, tired of dying while watching everyone around me suffer from the fallout of my son's choices. In July, hospice started coming to the house. Nurses who were too kind, too gentle, treating me like I was already a ghost. They managed my pain, helped with basic care, and pretended not to notice when I cried. I'd lie in bed at night, the morphine dulling the ache in my chest, and think about the life I'd lived. A good life, mostly. A loving marriage, a career I'd enjoyed. But motherhood had defined me. I'd shaped my identity around being Daniel's mom, and he'd repaid that devotion by becoming someone I didn't recognize. The worst part wasn't the betrayal. It was the grief of losing who I thought he was. August brought heat and humidity that made breathing difficult even with oxygen. I was in bed most days now. The world narrowed to my bedroom, the hospice nurses, and visits from Elena and the kids. My body was failing in stages. First, my appetite disappeared. Food tasted like cardboard mixed with metal. Then my strength drained until getting to the bathroom required help. My mind stayed sharp, though, which felt cruel. I was trapped in clarity inside a dying shell. Elena asked if I wanted to see Daniel before it's too late for goodbyes. I said no at first, then yes, then no again. Finally, I agreed. Not for him, but for me. There were things I needed to say. He came on a Wednesday afternoon. Cassandra wasn't with him. I'd made that condition clear. He looked terrible. Gaunt, gray-faced, wearing clothes that hung off him like he'd shrunk. He sat beside my bed, didn't speak for a long time, just looked at me, at the oxygen cannula, the morphine pump, the body that had given birth to him now reduced to a skeleton covered in papery skin. "I'm sorry," he said finally. "I know that's not enough. I know sorry doesn't fix anything. But Mom, I am so fucking sorry." I let him sit with that for a moment, then, "Tell me why. Why did I do it? Why you thought it was okay? Why did you think your happiness mattered more than your wife, your children, and your dying mother? Explain it to me so I can understand." He swallowed hard. "I don't think I can. When I met Cassie, it was like being awake after years of sleepwalking. Everything with Elena felt routine, predictable, and dead. And suddenly, here was this woman who laughed at my jokes and made me feel like I was someone worth knowing, someone exciting, and I didn't want to go back to feeling invisible." "So you made everyone else invisible instead?" He flinched. "I didn't think about it that way. I just knew I couldn't keep living a lie with Elena. And the money, I convinced myself I was investing in my future, in a fresh start. I genuinely believed I'd pay you back once I got established with new clients. I never meant to." "You never meant to get caught. That's different from never meaning to do it." Tears slid down his face. "Are you going to forgive me? Do you deserve forgiveness?" "No, probably not, but I'm asking anyway." I thought about it, really considered it. Forgiveness would be easier, wouldn't it? Would let me die without this weight of anger pressing on my chest, would give him peace, absolve him, and let him move forward telling himself his mother understood. But forgiveness unearned is just permission to do it again. "I forgive you for the money," I said slowly. "Money is just money. It's gone, and I can't take it with me anyway. But the rest of it, the lying, the selfishness, the way you broke your children's hearts and destroyed your wife and left me to die alone? No, Daniel, I don't forgive that. You're going to have to live with what you did. You're going to have to look at Mia and Josh as they grow up, damaged by your choices, and know you did that. And maybe, someday, years from now, you'll have earned forgiveness from them or from yourself, but not from me. I don't have enough time left to watch you become someone worthy of it." His face crumpled. "So that's it? You're just going to die hating me?" "I don't hate you," and I realized saying it that it was true. "I hate what you did, I hate who you became, but you're still my son. I still love you, and that's the tragedy, isn't it? That love doesn't stop just because someone destroys you." He left 20 minutes later. We didn't embrace, didn't say we'd see each other again, though we both knew we wouldn't. He walked out of my bedroom, down the stairs, and out the door. The last time I saw my son alive. I died on September 3rd, just after dawn. Elena was with me, so were Mia and Josh, though they didn't understand what was happening. The hospice nurse said it was peaceful, that I just stopped breathing, like falling asleep. I don't remember the dying part, but I remember the moment before, looking at my grandchildren, seeing their faces, and thinking that maybe some part of love survives even the worst betrayals. But this isn't a story about my death. It's about what happened after. Elena found the letters 2 weeks later, tucked into my desk drawer. I'd written them during sleepless nights in July, knowing my time was measured in weeks. One for Elena, one for Mia, one for Josh, and one for Daniel. Elena's letter thanked her for including me in her children's lives, for visiting me even when it hurt, for being the daughter I'd never had. I left her the house, small, paid off, but hers, a place to rebuild. Mia's letter told her to be brave, that she'd survive this, that her father's failures weren't hers to carry. Josh's letter was simpler, just, "It's okay to be angry, it's okay to hurt, but don't disappear. The world needs you in it." Daniel's letter was longer. I told him about his father, the man he'd forgotten or never really knew. Told him about the sacrifices Michael made, the quiet dignity of a life lived for others. Told him he could still become someone worthy of his children's respect, but it would take decades of effort and genuine change. And then I told him the truth. I'd changed my will. The life insurance money and the retirement account I'd protected even after giving him the $900,000, I'd left it all in a trust for Mia and Josh, managed by Elena, untouchable by him until the children turned 25. It wasn't much, $60,000 total, but invested properly it would grow, would help with college, with first apartments, with building lives their father had tried to destroy. Daniel contested the will, of course, argued he deserved a portion, but the document was airtight, witnessed and notarized. The judge threw out his petition in 15 minutes. Elena told me later, or would have if I'd been alive to hear it, that Cassandra left him 3 months after my death. Apparently, dating a broke, divorced man with traumatized children wasn't as romantic as she'd imagined. Last anyone heard, Daniel was working in a call center, living in a studio apartment, and seeing his kids every other weekend under Elena's supervision. Mia and Josh are adjusting. It'll take years, maybe forever, but they're talking again, laughing sometimes. Josh joined the school play. Mia made the honor roll. Small victories built on ruins. And me? I'm not here to see any of it. I'm just a story now. A cautionary tale about love and sacrifice and the children who consume their parents. But maybe that's enough. Maybe being remembered, truly remembered, not as a saint, but as a woman who loved fiercely and died betrayed, maybe that's the only immortality we get. Some truths don't set you free. They just echo. Some people spend their final days seeking forgiveness. I spent mine refusing to grant it. Perhaps that makes me vindictive. Perhaps it makes me honest. I learnt that love isn't always redemptive. Sometimes it's just grief wearing a familiar face. The money is gone, my body is gone, but the choice I made in that hospital room to die with my truth intact rather than absolve what shouldn't be absolved, that remains. and in the silence after my last breath, I like to think it mattered. If this story touched you, stay with me for the next one. Subscribe, like, share it with someone who would feel it, and leave your thoughts in the comments. My 10 p.m. stories. One story every night at 10 p.m.